We thank you for taking the time to join us on our morning broadcast as we started a new series yesterday concerning the commandments of God. We're going to try to deal with the difficult issues related to that and look at the purposes behind God's law and His commandments. We'll start off, though, today by looking at the commandments of the Old Testament and the purposes of the Old Testament law. When we think of the Old Testament law, the Mosaic law, we often think that all of history prior to the New Testament era was under the law of the Old Testament, but that's not really true. The Old Testament law was not given until about 1400 years before Christ, when Moses went up on the mountain, received the law, the Ten Commandments, and the other laws that followed. And before that, prior to that, there was a moral law that reflected the character of God, the person of the Lord, His character. And that law stretches all the way back to the creation of humanity. And so they were not without law. They had a law, but it wasn't a written down law. There wasn't all these moral codes and Ten Commandments and so forth. But that doesn't mean they were without right and wrong. So we have to remember that. But when the Mosaic law came in Exodus chapter 20, that dominated the rest of the Old Testament and much of the Gospels as well, because recall that the New Testament era, the church age, does not actually begin to Acts chapter 2. So this is an important point and an important piece of much of the scriptural revelation. We find in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 8, these words, "For we know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully." So the Old Testament law is never depicted as being wrong or evil or anything less than righteous and good. It's good if it's used properly, used lawfully. That's what Paul says in Timothy. So let's talk about some of the purposes behind the law. Why did the Lord give Israel in the Old Testament this Old Testament law? What purpose did it have? So I want to run down with you several purposes of the law. We'll probably finish these tomorrow, but we'll start off with the fact that the law reveals sin. We're going back to Romans now. Romans deals with this a great deal. Chapter 3 of Romans and verse 20. "Because by the works of the law no flesh will be justified in his sight, for through the law comes the knowledge of sin." Now he's showing here that no one is ever saved by keeping the law. But he does say that the knowledge of sin is found in the law. The law reveals sin, especially the moral sections of the law. It reveals what sin is. And there's many of those laws, as Paul goes on to talk about in chapter 7, that we really wouldn't understand to be sinful if God didn't reveal it so. In Romans 7, he especially picks out coveting, that is materialism, seeking the things of other people as our own and so forth, greed. He said, I don't think I would have known that was wrong if the law had not told me. So the law reveals sin. Secondly, it produces guilt. Look at verse 19. It says, "Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are in the law, so that every mouth may be shut up, and all the world may become accountable to God." And so it proves, the law shows that we're truly guilty. It's an objective standard that says, here's what God says. Here are the characteristics of God that He is giving to His people, to us, and those revealed to us are guilt. It shows us that we do not meet His standard, and therefore we are guilty before God and guilty before the law. In chapter 4, verse 15, he talks about the standard of the law. Verse 15, "For the law brings about wrath, but where there is no law, there is also no trespass." So as a part of being guilty before God, as the law reveals, we also are under the wrath of God. So Paul's building an argument to show that we are right. It is right and just that we are condemned and under the very wrath of God because we do not keep the law of God. And then he goes on to say in chapter 5, verse 20, something that we may not expect the law to do, and that is to increase sin. It said, "Now the law came in so that the transgression might increase. But where sin increased, grace abounded all the more." The law actually, as we will see, produces sin because when our human nature, our sinful nature, is told not to do something, we immediately want to do it. We are by nature defiant and rebellious. And so the law actually produces sin, but that's not a bad thing, he says, because where sin increases, grace abounds. That is, as we begin to recognize our true sinfulness and our true need, then we can call on the grace of God, which is adequate and more than adequate to meet the needs of our life as sinners and save us from our sin. So those are 4 of the reasons why the Lord has given us His law. We'll look at a few more tomorrow, so I hope you can join us.